If you've ever debated anything balance related about Dead by Daylight on the internet, you've probably heard the following statement. I don't care, it's not my job to make sure you have fun. And as is typical of the internet, this statement usually leads to a total devolution of all discourse, and all parties involved resort to ad hominems within a few minutes. In many ways, this statement is like tossing a verbal grenade into what may have previously been a totally civil round of debate. But let's take all emotionality out of the equation for a moment and ask ourselves, is there any truth to the idea that another player's fun isn't your responsibility? Well, if you have more than 2 brain cells to rub together, then I'm hoping that you said yes, there is truth to that. Because there absolutely is. Your choices in Dead by Daylight, or in any other aspect of life, really, shouldn't be based on what's going to make the maximum number of people happy. While it may seem like a nice idea to try and cause as much happiness as possible, there are 2 major flaws with that line of thought. Firstly, there's the issue that you're never going to make everyone happy. You might do a nice thing by purchasing bagels for everyone in the office, but maybe Peter from accounting hates bagels. Maybe you're a city mayor, and you decide to use resources to fill in potholes on Street A. Well, now residents of Street B, C, and D are angry that you fixed a street they don't care about rather than the one that they use every day. Even if you sit at home all day, interacting with no one, and living as minimally as possible, there are going to be people who dislike you for presumably wasting the only life you have. I am not being hyperbolic when I say that no matter what you do or who you are, there will always be someone who hates your guts. And that's only one issue with the making everyone happy way of living. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, is that you shouldn't have to bend over backwards to make everyone else happy. Your life is your life, and that's that. Sure, there may be cultural, relational, religious, or otherwise undefined reasons that you want to make others happy. Hell, you may just be a natural-born people pleaser. But at the end of the day, nobody owes you their kindness. To say otherwise would be equivalent to saying that a random person owes you their interest. In the same manner that they might perceive you as boring, they might also just not want to be nice to you, and they're within their rights to feel that way. With this in mind, there is absolutely no reason in day-to-day life to constantly stress about how others perceive you. Identify your values and pursue them so that you might become a virtuous person. While this approach certainly can and will manifest in big picture decisions, it should also play out in smaller, less obvious interactions. Wear the clothing you like, listen to the music you enjoy, pursue the hobbies that interest you, and work to become the best human you can be. So, case closed, right? Food is telling you that you're entirely free from having to care about the experiences of other players in Dead by Daylight, right? Well, no, not exactly. While I hate to make something as simple as DBD etiquette seem larger than it is, I posit that what we're talking about when we have this discussion is less about whether or not you should cater to the whims of others, and more about a questioning of each player's integrity. While the developers have tried to coerce certain behaviors from the community with features such as chat filters, which are garbage, and easy report functionality, which does nothing, the true measure of a player's integrity is not what they do in the shadow of the ban hammer, but what they do when they feel safe to be who they really are. And it is there in that moment of reveling in one's true self that their integrity or lack thereof begins to be relevant. Dead by Daylight is a game with far more unwritten rules than legitimate ones, and how a person interacts with the unwritten rules goes considerably further in illuminating who they really are. Of course, unwritten rules aren't consistent across all players, so no matter what you do, you will violate these rules, and you will do so frequently. In my many years of playing Dead by Daylight, I've come across some hilariously stupid unwritten rules. I'd like to list some out for you, and just note that while it may seem like I'm being hyperbolic for the sake of comedy, I promise you that I have witnessed all of these, whether it's on Twitter, Reddit, or most commonly in my own games. So here are some rules to follow if you're dedicated to making everyone happy. Never play Doctor. His static blast disorients some players. Never play Hag. Her phantasm traps can induce anxiety. Never play Legion. Their power is BS and mending is stupid. Never use iridescent add-ons. They're too strong, all of them. Never use other powerful add-ons. They're not fun to play against, and good killers shouldn't need them. Never play as one of the original 4 survivors. Only toxic or baby players use those characters. Never face camp under any circumstance. Never hook the same survivor consecutively for any reason. Never play nurse, she's too powerful. Never use brand new parts. Never bring flashlights. Never bring strong medkits. Never use 4 meta perks in the same build. Never slug for any reason. Never play clown. His bottles give certain players headaches. Never bring map offerings. Don't take too long to ready up. Don't play one side if you main the other side. Don't play Bubba for obvious reasons. Don't play in a Swift. Don't use strong loops. I already said you shouldn't run meta perks, but ironically, there are also survivors that will tell you not to run non-meta perks if you're going to be on their team. And look, the list goes on. If you'd like, I made satirical videos a while back about the rulebooks for each side if you want to go check those out. The point, as it is relevant to our discussion today, is that no matter what you do or how you play, you're going to catch hell for it eventually. And when you do, it's a totally reasonable response to just shrug and say, screw the other side, I'm not here for them. And really, in those moments, that's fair. Play as the character you want to play as, using the perks and add-ons that you want to use, and burning whichever offerings you want to burn. And when you inevitably receive salt for something totally innocuous, I think you're well within your rights to laugh at that person getting upset because you dared to play in a way that doesn't fit their narrowly constructed view of what Dead by Daylight is supposed to look like. These people are clowns, and if nobody calls them out on it, they risk getting a little too big for their britches. But as always, there are 2 sides to every story, and I'm just gonna keep it 100 with you. The vast majority of people who use the "your fun isn't my problem" approach tend to be insufferable assholes. I know. I just spent an entire video talking about not only how you shouldn't obsess over what others think, but stating that it was in fact virtuous to act on your own desires. While that's certainly true to an extent, I think now's a good time to remind you that regardless of your own personal morality, most people alive today agree that it's wrong to be purposefully spiteful to people for no reason. So, while there's nothing wrong with tunneling, camping, slugging, teabagging, clicking your flashlight, or general bad manners on a moral level, to do these things consistently certainly highlights a certain lack of kindness or empathy in a given player. You're free to play as nastily as you'd like, sure. But it's also good to remember that you're not a brutal serial killer serving the will of an eldritch deity. You're also not a scrappy survivor fighting hard against an unfeeling monster so that you might live to see another day. All you are when you play Dead by Daylight is a person sitting in front of a screen and playing a video game. Nothing more, nothing less. So to lose yourself in this unending spiral of spite and power tripping, honestly, it's just more sad than anything else. Like all video games, Dead by Daylight is meant to be fun. Anybody who tells you otherwise has completely lost the plot. I don't care if it's Pong, Super Mario 64, or the Drake and Josh game for Game Boy Advance, which was, by the way, developed by some company called Behavior Interactive, in case you're curious. Video games are meant to be fun, and while I certainly agree that you don't have to provide others with fun in a multiplayer game, you also shouldn't go out of your way to make sure they're having a bad time either. And that's where the crux of the issue with the quote, "your fun isn't my job" mentality starts to become clear. While it's entirely possible that somebody could say this after receiving undue criticism, in my anecdotal experience, that's not often the case. If a player is criticized for their choice of character, the response is often, oh, well, I can play whoever I want. If they're criticized for their build, they can always break out the "all reliable, get good." But when a player uses the quote about whether or not fun is their job, this is often in regards to how nastily they played the game. And that's not surprising. While the statement is technically true, it's also undeniably snide. A kind-hearted player catching flack for playing as Legion simply isn't going to turn to such incendiary phrasing as their first line of defense. As I said earlier, this phrase is something of a verbal hand grenade at the current moment, and last I checked, you don't use grenades to deal with minor inconveniences. If you do, please let me know so I can get clear of the premises before you take care of that roach you just saw in your kitchen. The last thing I want to touch on in regard to today's topic is the general health and upkeep of the DBD community. Despite its reputation, I don't actually think Dead by Daylight's community is nearly as toxic as it's made out to be. Sure, DBD Twitter is an absolute hellhole filled with destructive criticism, toxic positivity, hypersexualization, and more cancellation attempts than should be humanly possible, but that's Twitter. All of society's worst people congregate on Twitter, most especially me. It's the Mos Eisley of our world. In-game, though, out in the fog, things aren't as bad as they seem. I maintain that most people, remember that I said most people, play the game just to have a good time. And while the game undeniably has an entitlement problem where players get upset when the other side plays as intended, I still don't think things are that bad. That said, the more people that take the "your fun isn't my job" approach, the more the game will suffer. As ridiculous as the unwritten rulebooks have grown to be, they initially existed for a very good reason. Game balance is insanely difficult, and that struggle is amplified 10 times over when applied to an asymmetrical experience. DBD may be at its most balanced state of all time, arguably, but there will always be bugs, exploits, and general imbalances that possess the ability to sap the fun out of one side's playtime. If we love this game and want it to get better and not worse, we should consider the other side to a reasonable degree. No, this doesn't mean you always have to give the last survivor hatch or let the killer get at least one sacrifice just to be nice. It does, I think, mean that when you realize you're facing a brand new baby killer, maybe it's not the time to head-on flashbang and generally make that killer's life miserable. A pinch of kindness goes a long way, and while the line between goofing off and actively bullying can be vague, I think most people know it when they see it. Part of the solution to what we're talking about here is holding both yourself and your friends accountable. When friends go off on some stupid rant about how the killer is an asshole because they're camping, be the voice of reason and try to offer why they might be doing that. Is your team punishing the killer for camping by doing gens, or are you guys bum rushing the hook and ending the game early? Is it the in-game collapse, a time when killers absolutely should camp? The same line of logic applies for playing killer as well, though that's more about holding yourself responsible because it's a solo role. So, to summarize all that's been said in this video, no, the fun of others is not your job. But yes, you should generally care enough to treat others with a smidge of kindness. Ultimately, you can be a power-tripping asshole all you'd like, and nobody's gonna stop you. But if you do that, and I am dead serious about this, if you are one of these people who says, "Oh, well, your fun isn't my job," then I don't want to hear a single complaint out of you regarding anything from the other side. Not about a perk that seems busted, an exploit that's being abused, or a playstyle that you think is toxic. Sure, it's not cool that they're playing like that, but hey, your fun isn't their job. And that's gonna do it for us today, foodies. I hope you had a good time. I hope that maybe this one got you thinking. I hope that maybe we can go out and treat people with some kindness going forward. Either way, I hope you are having a lovely day wherever you are. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that you stay tuned for the next one, which should come out on Wednesday. But until the next time, I have been Das Food. Bye, friends.
I've been dreaming on in my head like I've seen it. A life worth living is a life with meaning. I'll do what I love till my heart stops beating. I'm feeding this demon. Got a taste, can't erase bitterness in my